Welcome to the Customer Smarts podcast, where you'll discover smarter ways to deliver customer experiences. I'm your host, Justin Stafford, and in this episode, we've got a special guest, Dr. Guyan Benedict, joining us. Guyan is Chief Technology Officer at Salesforce Australia and New Zealand and VP of Architecture and Industry Transformation across the Asia Pacific region. He's also worked in technology leadership roles for the Reserve Bank of Australia, Westpac, and Oracle. We're going to talk about AI, the importance of the CMO and CTO relationship, delivering personalisation at scale, and how to improve your MarTech utilisation. Welcome, Guy, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Justin. I'm really happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
I'd love to start with the topic that's top of mind for many marketers and business leaders, which of course is AI. Now, AI has been bubbling away for many years. Then ChatGPT seems to have come on the scene and made it accessible for the masses. And essentially he's kickstarted this spotlight on AI. So it'd be great to get your perspective on what excites you about AI, but also what concerns you or worries you about AI as well. So maybe let's start with what excites you first.
Sure. Look, first I'll say you're right. It has been around for a long time. It's been almost here since the dawn of computing, actually. So it's been with us for a long time, but the progression and the evolution and the innovation even in the last year has just been astounding. And I think the potential and the opportunities for its use and the applications that are becoming obvious, and even the ones that I think we can only hint at the moment, are thrilling, exciting. I mean, from not just from a business perspective, but from every aspect of our life, actually. But equally, I think to your point, it's a very powerful capability, a very powerful tool, a very powerful technology, and inevitably there's going to be a lot of risks. We're already seeing concerns about this in all sorts of areas, and we also know some of the risks will become more obvious in time. So, it's the unknown that I think is as scary as anything, as well as the sheer power of the capability and its ease of use is probably one of its most compelling characteristics. The fact that it can be put in almost anyone's hands, and therefore its use is almost limited only by their imagination. And increasingly, maybe even the imagination of AI itself, because the technology can actually use itself, which is particularly interesting and challenging aspect of it, and something quite unique, I think, in human history.
Have you seen any great examples what sort of sparked your excitement when you've seen, wow, you've seen an example out there that you're like, this is really going to be amazing?
Look, everyone inevitably have seen the original GPT, those generative AI capabilities where it really replaces the core use cases of internet search. Where we're hoping that someone else has solved a problem and it's on the internet and a search engine will allow us to be connected to that information. Whereas obviously with generative AI, it allows humans and us to solve problems and get answers to questions that possibly haven't been asked before. And so I think that's very compelling. I think now what we're starting to see some really interesting business use cases and all sorts of other use cases beyond just the initial ones. My own company, Salesforce, have already released now quite a significant number of generative AI and capabilities where staff can be assisted in pulling together responses and answers to really complex customer problems. The customers can actually serve their requirements and get really rich, personalized recommendations based on very specific circumstances that are unique to them, in ways which go far above and beyond what was previously possible with even standard or predictive AI. And I think the use cases are just compounding on a daily basis. I think we're seeing video generation and all sorts of multimodal AI use that go beyond purely text-based interaction, which is sort of pointing to whole new channels and avenues of innovation right in front of us.
So when you say multimodal, I'm sure that's like lots of different aspects coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, everyone's initial experience was type text and read text. And I think now the idea to type text and receive video, or to potentially share video and actually receive back text, and the ability to amalgamate those things and actually have a much richer set of interfaces is really exciting. And I think in the not too far future, we'll see the incorporation of that AI into robotics as well. And so, we've seen a lot of advances in robotics in recent years, but they've essentially been dumb. They looked very human-like and very tactile and dexterous, but not necessarily intelligent. But I think if you now combine what we're seeing with generative AI with very advanced robotics, just the potentials and opportunities that present are actually pretty astounding.
It's interesting to look forward, I guess, if you're to look forward 5 years, where do you think we'll be as a society with AI? Once the dust settles and all the hype and excitement kind of, settles down a little bit, where do you think we'll be at that point?
Yeah, look, I think, AI is going to move forward in an astounding ways, but I think what we can predict is it's going to be incorporated into our everyday life in quite foundational ways. I think from an organizational perspective, it means that AI is often going to be representing you increasingly to your customers, whereas at the moment you have a service agent or a staff member in a branch or a store, for instance. In the future, you're going to have digital personas, and obviously some organizations already have digital personas, some quite familiar to us, like those personal assistants. I think it's important to start thinking about, do we brand our own organizational persona now and start that journey with customers? Because it's very hard to just demand a customer to trust an AI persona and then instantly exchange very intimate private information with it. There's a lot of wisdom in building that trust up consecutively. And some of those personal assistants have been in our houses for almost a decade, if not longer, right? So we're already comfortable with them being part of our lives. And at some point in time, they're going to help us with our financial transactions and, some of our more personal affairs, which is going to involve quite sensitive information and quite a lot of personal information. So I think building up trust with AI personas is something that actually takes time and needs to be started to be considered now, because simply releasing an AI bot with a real personality that is expecting to be able to exchange very private, sensitive financial information with customers within a matter of weeks, it's just not going to happen. Trust is a human trait that takes time, and I think it's important to have that longer term view if we look forward to the deployment and potential of AI into the future.
Yeah, trust is definitely important. I think transparency as well. I've had a few experiences where you're a little confused whether it's AI or a real person, and it's just so frustrating, isn't it? Especially if a customer, if you're at a time of need where you really just want to speak to a person, and allowing that choice to the customer or user. If they want to speak to a person, they can, but if they want to get it done faster, AI can help you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think transparency is certainly one of the traits and the principles we promote, and transparency actually in itself builds trust. If people can then formally view themselves as, is this the way that I want to interact, or do I want to speak to a human, or in fact do I just want to self-service this myself? Giving them the choice and giving them the information to make that choice actually goes a long way to building trust. If a customer or a user is sitting there wondering, who am I actually talking to, or what am I talking to, it creates a reason to second guess what they want to contribute and how they want to participate in that engagement. It definitely, and if it goes wrong, it can create a lot of frustration, which can be very hard again to pull back and to restore in the future.
So I'm guessing you're getting a lot of questions from customers or organisations wanting to make the most of this newer technology. I guess it's been around for a while in Salesforce, like you say, but now that there's a lot of hype around it, you'd be getting lots of questions every day, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, we have a lot of rich relationships with folk in our customers, and a lot of them want to get equipped with information because they're getting a lot of questions themselves within their own organization. So, a big part of our conversations is working with our sponsors and those who own our platforms within an enterprise, and making sure they are equipped with a lot of information around how we're using the technology and what the potential is for the organization. But I think equally, the usefulness and the power of the technology is self-evident to many people. It's not that hard to get the power of generative AI. When you see it in action and you play with it a little, it's clearly very powerful. It's also very accessible. I think very quickly the conversation goes to, wow, this is so powerful. What are going to be the guardrails? What are the risks we need to be mindful of? And I think, interestingly, and I think pleasingly for Salesforce, we spend probably as much time talking about how to manage the risks and being mindful of using this technology, this AI in a trusted way. And I think that's very encouraging for us. I think unlike maybe earlier iterations of technology, organizations ran in and then used them and then some disastrous consequences. it's very obvious here that people are attuned to the risks and they're being very mindful around how they introduce this technology in a guarded and careful and considered way. The good news for us is, Salesforce in 1999, when it was established, was one of, if not the first software as a service provider. It was asking organizations to give it very sensitive and critical customer data and put it on the internet. Which if you think about it, 24 years ago, that was groundbreaking, but also very scary for some organizations. So that's why trust became the number one value for the company. And what we're finding is actually that continuous, almost existential focus on trust is proving very invaluable right now, because even from our first early forays into AI almost a decade ago, we put a lot of effort into ethical guidelines, the guardrails. Most recently, our chief ethical scientist for AI in Salesforce published our generative AI guidelines in the Harvard Business Review, and so we've effectively open sourced those as well, with a real emphasis on transparency and honesty and sustainability. And so we're finding a lot of our customers are engaging with us at that level and asking, how do we responsibly deploy this technology? How do we build up the capability internally? How do we make sure the guardrails are in place? So as this becomes more ubiquitous and very broadly deployed across the organization, we've got the right balances and the right controls in place to avoid any ethical nightmares or disasters in the future, but also to instill confidence in their customers and their consumers, to make sure that they can be perceived as a trusted organization to share this data with going forward.
So talking about risk, what are some of the big, I guess, key watch out areas? I mean, trust obviously is so important, like you just said. Where could companies go wrong with AI?
Sure. And look, some of the AI risks have been known for some time. We've seen risks of bias and toxicity, almost emerge from the very first commercial and consumer adoptions of AI, where AI inadvertently or advertently, potentially maliciously, it engages with individuals or companies or stakeholders in a way which is toxic. It breaches societal norms. It goes way beyond what's acceptable from customers or even broader society. And then we find those organizations and maybe the producers of those technologies have to very quickly retract and backtrack and say, wow, we didn't know that was going to happen. They have to put in more checks and balances, more controls. The danger is, what happens is, when that happens, is you lose reputation and you can lose trust. It can be a while before that customer will re-engage with you in that way. And as we know, trust is hard won and easily lost. And so our strong caution is maintain that trust at every moment as you foray into AI, because if you lose it, it can be a while, if ever, before you retain it. And in the meantime, others are moving forward. So we really think taking a trustful approach to the deployment of AI from the very beginning is going to be critical. We're absolutely certain that in the broader world, there are going to be some disasters that are going to unfold. We're going to see front page news stories of organizations that got it wrong. Something toxic is going to happen. Bias is going to be instantiated. Potentially AI is going to be misused and used to create some kind of societal harm or organizational harm in a way which wasn't envisaged. And if you're associated with those experiences, it's going to damage your brand and your reputation. And so we think it's really important to be mindful of that from the very beginning, and to bake that in, not just into your governance around how you deploy the technology, but I think fundamentally into your culture, and I think also importantly into the technology itself. Because I'm certain that the tide's going in. Everyone's looking at investing and experimenting in this space and deploying capability to get ahead. There will be mistakes and missteps, and there will be a retreat. The tide will go back, and it's those who have prepared themselves and made sure that they're in a good place that are not going to be found wanting when the tide recedes on this. You want to be in the right place so that you can then move forward when others are retreating and having to go back, as we go through the various challenges that this new wave of innovation is going to present.
I'd like to move on and talk about the relationship between the CMO and the CTO, which is, so critical when it comes to customer experience and operating the CRM platforms. However, as you know, often there's sometimes tensions and politics at play when it comes to how the core CRM platforms are managed, debates over ownership, and even decision making as well. So what can CMOs and CTOs do to improve the relationship from both sides? Let's start with what CMOs can do better.
Yeah, Thanks, Justin. Look, I think, first of all, I will say the relationship is critical. It's a collaboration. A CMO can't operate without technology support and then relies on technology support. Even if they want to have all the systems under them, there are certain things that a technology function does, like security, like stability, that, you know, just are outside of the bailiwick and the realms of typical focus of a CMO. So appreciating the value they can get from the technology organization is going to be really important. Appreciating that they rely on the technology organization for many of those capabilities. I used to be the CIO up until quite recently, actually, and I realized the value of partnership. I think, on the other hand, the CMO is the functional owner of so many key aspects of what a business does these days. You know, they look after the interactions with customers, and those interactions go all the way through the sales and service. And, you know, if you want a long-lived relationship with customers and segments, you know, your CMO often is responsible for the strategy that sits around that relationship. So I think a CMO should appreciate the value and the importance of technology in supporting that relationship and that capability going forward. Perhaps previously they were less dependent on technology, but in today's digital world, it's really hand in hand. I mean, I think you know, even the concept of MarTech didn't really exist 10 or 15 years ago, but these days it's a core competency for any marketing function going forward, and a successful CMO. I think being able to appreciate the potential of technology is also exciting. There are often a lot of innovations in technology that perhaps don't first manifest in the marketing domain, but being across what those innovations are and having a good relationship with your technology peers actually potentially gives you access to some of those innovations, so you can use and deploy them initially within an organization and really be a digital champion within the organization, which I think is something a lot of CMOs aim to do, and a lot of organizations want them to do. So I think, again, that's only going to be something possible if you have a strong collaboration with your CTO, your CIO, so that you've got that peering relationship and you're both looking to help each other and succeed.
Have you seen any good examples within companies where that relationship is really strong and healthy, and, you know, that the company's benefiting from it?
Look, I think if you look at any organization in the last several years that's made a successful digital transformation, particularly a digital transformation that's very outward facing and facing customers, it'd be very unusual if you don't see a strong collaboration between CMO and CTO. You know, there's a couple that I can think of very fondly, you know, all that we work quite closely with. One is Formula One. You know, Formula One has gone through any number of disruptions over many years and decades, often many technology innovation disruptions, more recently the sustainability disruptions, but like with every other organization industry over the last 3 or 4 years, a big pandemic inspired disruption as well, where, you know, races stopped. How do you engage customers and fans in this case going forward? And so Formula One was a great example of where the association, the organization, appreciated the value of how do we engage with fans. Not many of our fans are even able to come to our races. I think only 1% of their $500 million fans get to go to a Formula One race, but the other 99% are very engaged, and that's happened over the last 3-4 years because they've used opportunities like you know, the Netflix program that's been released to really build up fan base and appreciation, but then they've digitally connected. They've amalgamated a lot of their data across their fan base. They've made that available for highly personalized interactions with fans and really brought them into the tent, so to speak, of what Formula One is. And that's a classic example of where the business strategy of the organization, the core operations of the organization, the core technology organization, and the marketing strategy and the marketing function of the organization have worked in lockstep to really use digital transformation just to take it to another level. I think they've increased their fan base, you know, an exponential amount over the last 3 or 4 years, and their fan base is more engaged than it's ever been. And this is one of the most rapidly fan-based sporting cultures in the world. So that's a really good standout of an organization that's used its challenges to digitize and then use the personalization that's been available from that digitalization just to take things to the next level with their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the Netflix is one great example there where, you know, they've sort of really gone all in on that, and it's paid spades, but obviously there's a lot more behind the scenes helping grow that customer base digitally. And like you say, how do you keep them engaged during the, you know, when there's no racing happening?
Absolutely. I think a common theme that I've seen for successful partnerships between marketing and technology is making sure that the underlying culture and values of the organization are captured and distilled, and then the marketing technology strategy builds on those. So I think, Formula One really had a sense of excitement and loyalty to teams, to races, and they really wanted to make sure that excitement, that essence of excitement, the noise and the buzz and the thrill and the sort of hanging onto your chair while every moment was unfolding, they've really sustained that excitement through every part of their digital relationship. And if I look at other organizations, Mecca's a great one we work very closely with in our part of the world in Australia, which was a fantastic cosmetic and beauty provider, which is just growing fantastically. The pandemic hit and they had to shut all their stores down, and they really built themselves up on an in-store experience, and they had to quickly shift to digital. And what they've done, I think, really well is they said, well, what is the experience we had in store that we want to capture, the essence of that experience? They realized that personalized experience, the community they built was critical. And then when they brought the technology organization in, they really made sure that those key characteristics were retained and delivered in the digital experience that was subsequently laid out. And I think that's really important. Think about what is the essence of your organization, and then think about what marketing and technology can do to reinforce that essence.
Yeah. So using technology to enhance your core, how you're delivering on customers, whereas sometimes you see people going to tech too early and it almost getting done in reverse.
Look, absolutely, and I think this will touch on how you use the tech effectively. I think the danger with tech is it can be very depersonalizing. It's a common criticism of technologies. I feel like a number. I feel like I'm, just another person at the end of an app or a website. And people, particularly people who or customers had very strong connections with brands and organizations personally. If you were a bank, you could walk into a branch, in the olden days, and you would know the tellers. If you're a store, you'd know the store assistant, and they would know your preferences and styles. So there's a lot of deep personal connection there. A lot of that was lost when we went to digital. And I think, organizations like Formula One, Mecca, that we've just talked about, they're working out the importance of personalization, but more importantly, how to reintroduce that personalization and, in fact, in some ways, amplify it in ways that would never been possible by using digital. And that's what's really setting them apart.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about data and personalization now. So I guess consolidating data into a single customer view, or as Salesforce calls it, customer 360, is essential for delivering, I would say, like the base level of customer service in today's world. So then I guess the next frontier for a lot of organizations is delivering personalized experiences at scale, or hyper personalization. There's a lot of terms for it at the moment. What do businesses need to do to get to that place where they're delivering personalized customer experiences at scale?
Sure. I think, I'll start by saying customer experiences have always typically been personalized, but they often relied on people, your staff, to do that level of personalization, whether it was your brokers, your store assistants, your branch tellers, whoever you were, you relied on the person-to-person connection. But as we move to digital, often we've lost that personalization, and, most people, initial complaints of their digital experience was, I'm just another number and I get a standardized experience. But I think the leaders are working out how to reintroduce personalization. And in our experience, there's a couple of things you really need to make that work. One is you need a lot of data. That personal relationship that you used to have, or you have maybe already with your customer from a person-to-person contact, there's a lot of data behind that. People have memories, they have thoughts, they can pick up cues in real time. To replicate that digitally, you need a massive amount of data. You need to actually see what a customer's doing, what they like, what they don't like. You need to ask them and respect their wishes. And so there's a lot of data. And that data doesn't just exist in one channel. They interact with you, a customer interacts with you in many different fashions, from looking at your content publicly available in marketing context, maybe more personalized marketing or targeted marketing, but then they buy products off you, then they request that servicing off you, so they have some longevity of a relationship. So there's so many different touch points for that data to be captured. I think importantly, often maybe not considered enough, when you're trying to capture all that data, you need a culture of data sharing in an organization. And if you try to lead a marketing technology project or a business initiative to try to get all the data in one place, and you have not got a data sharing culture or a customer centric culture within the organization, they're probably going to trip you up many times over. So I think concurrently, you want to make sure there is an appreciation of the importance of data sharing, particularly around customer data in the organization. That you have your peers, your executive cohorts and collaborators appreciating the value of this, and they realize it's not just for your benefit as a marketing leader to get that information, that information is also available for them to deliver better sales or better service outcomes for customers. So everyone benefits, especially the customer, from having that 360-degree view of customer data.
Have you seen, got any good examples of companies who are doing that well, where it's really that centralized data, and they've built a really great culture around that, where they're all building it together, and they all know the value if they all work together and improve the data, and are constantly, I guess, keeping it clean, and are there any good examples of companies that are doing that well?
Yeah, look, one I'd maybe draw your attention to is Ford. It's one of the oldest companies around, familiar to so many people. They're at the dawn of the motor age. What they've done is they've appreciated the value of that 360-degree view of customer, and they make that information not just available to every key part of the Ford organization that interacts with customers. They make that information available also back to the customer. So they take advantage of that. They use it for highly personalized interactions, not just marketing interactions, but servicing interactions. When you have service requirements around your car, when you're ordering a car, they give you amazing transparency around the status of an order. And we know, especially in the last year or two, when supply chains have been out the door and people have been waiting not just weeks, but months and sometimes even years for a car, that even a little bit of information gives you a little bit of hope that this product is actually going to be delivered and eventually turn up on your driveway or in front of your apartment. And so they've just done a wonderful job of connecting a customer-centric culture across the organization, making sure that all of those leaders are contributing data into that customer-centric 360-degree view, then making that information back to all of those functions within the organization, but also the customer. And I think one thing they've done that it's gone even further than that, which we really buy into at Salesforce. One of the things I love about Salesforce has an ecosystem approach, not just a platform-based approach. And what that means is they open up that data in a trusted fashion to other organizations, including their own customers, so they themselves can actually build experiences and services around it. And for their professional customers or business owner customers, they actually provide data and platforms that allow them to actually do their job and provide services to their customers. So I just think it's a wonderful example of digitization, which is hyper-personalized interactions, increased customer satisfaction, increased performance, facilitated their shift to electrification. It's just a fantastic all-round story.
It'd be great to move on and talk about how organizations can improve utilization of their MarTech stack. So from what I've seen, some organizations tend to struggle and being held back by, I guess, a very product-centric culture and siloed ways of operating. From your perspective, how important is having a customer-centric culture in the context of marketing technology?
I mean, ultimately, marketing technology sits underneath a marketing function, which is ultimately marketing to existing and prospective customers. So they're all intrinsically linked to each other. And marketing, in some ways, might be contentious to say this, but in many organizations probably has, a very broad-based view of customers, because it sees them in every shape and form. It segments them, it understands them in terms of volume, and then down to the individual. And so marketers, I think, understand the psychology and the dynamics of what goes through a customer's mind. Not always good, sometimes bad, because they're often dealing with the fallout for negative experiences as well. So I think marketing technology can provide marketers with information that not only helps them serve a customer better, but I think importantly also gives them very rare and invaluable insight that they can share with the rest of the organization. And in my experience, a really savvy marketing leader will use their MarTech capability to absolutely improve the customer outcomes that they're driving towards. They want satisfaction, they want sales performance, they want advocacy and engagement. All those things clearly a MarTech platform and strategy will support you with. But I think maybe sometimes missed is the invaluable insight and data that you have as a marketing leader about customers that is frankly gold in the hands of someone responsible for sales or business engagement or servicing and even compliance. Talk to some customers or organizations who have had difficult choices around what do we do with our complaints data? Do we exclude it from our SAT scores, or do we include it in our SAT scores? And even by including the complaint metrics in there, it actually gives you some really useful insights that can actually help some of your sales engagement and your service engagement. So providing that information and using it within the organization to help other functions better serve customers, I think is a hidden superpower of MarTech, and something which, if done properly, will activate that customer-centric culture and encourage your peers and other functions to actually give you more data. If they all drive towards a customer data capability because they know that data will come back and be helpful for them in their own performing of functions, it just gives that extra incentive, that extra flywheel for getting success around a MarTech platform, let alone the more obvious benefits around how you deliver highly personalized experiences and marketing engagements with customers.
Yeah, it's a great point you make there. And I've been having quite a few conversations with CX leaders on the disconnect between marketing and the frontline customer service staff, and I guess the insights that they get talking to customers, and sometimes marketing, and I come from a marketing background, but sometimes get caught up in their own projects and a little disconnected from the reality of what really happens with customers on the front line. And I guess a platform like Salesforce helps bring those two aspects or departments together. In your experience, have you seen some good examples of that transfer of information from the front line back to marketing?
Look, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the transfer of frontline to marketing, like your service agents, for instance, I often say that sometimes your most powerful frontline is your contact center and your service support staff. Having led organizations where the majority of customer interactions actually come from your customer service functions, there's invaluable insight and intel which is coming from those functions, which can actually inform marketing engagements and planning. So having that sort of information from the back end of the life cycle fed back into the front end is invaluable. But I think equally the other way, I think marketing often has access to one thing that the rest of the organization doesn't have, which is access to information about customers that comes from outside the organization. There's streams of data, sometimes purchased, sometimes acquired with partners, etc., that actually give you a holistic view of a customer or a prospective customer, which isn't available from internal systems and often even existing interactions with customers. So marketing and MarTech can actually augment customer data with really rich information, which can be really invaluable when you're dealing with a service experience with a high value customer, or coming up with a particular service improvement plan, or if you're trying to sell something to an individual or a segment or a particular type of customer. That augmented data that MarTech can often provide them is worth its weight in gold. I think, though, to make that work, you need a culture of sharing the information, as we've discussed before, and people's willingness to use data that hasn't just come from their own systems and processes, but also come from other parts of the organization or potentially even outside. So again, it really requires a customer-centric transition to have occurred, and a whole of customer data culture to be put in place, and then a collaboration around data sharing to sit on top of that. Once you've got those things in place, then you can really start delivering some fantastic experiences. And importantly, you don't want to wait for them all to be done. Sometimes even delivering early wins actually creates an incentive to do more of this kind of collaboration and data sharing in the first place.
Fantastic. Well, we'll finish up there. Thank you so much, Guy, for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure to have you on and have a great chat.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Absolutely. Loved being on, loved the questions, loved the discussion. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how it progresses, and love to see the comments from those who listen going forward.
Thanks for tuning in. Some amazing insights from an incredibly smart tech leader. If you found this insightful, make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button now, as we have some great episodes coming up. And if you have any questions or would like to chat to us, then reach out to us at customersmarts.co. Catch you next time.